Are cheesy bean and rice burritos fresco style good option for breakfast or lunch?
They're a good option for all times of day.
All times.
Cheesy bean and rice burritos.
Like,
Gotta get the fresco.
Matter of fact.
Fresco is the key.
Fresco is the key.
I'm surprised Brian didn't bring any in here with him.
Oh man, I already had 3 today.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing slouches with
You
a non-slouch.
Yeah.
Non-slouch.
We got a non-sloucher here today.
You have
That's right.
the least, 3 of the least serious people on the face of the earth on the couch today, so this should go really well.
Should go good.
Shall be fun.
Coach Casey on the couch today, one of our triathlon coaches and our registered dietitian nutritionist. That's right, RDN, right?
Nutritionalist, yes.
Nutritionalist, whatever.
RDN, yeah.
Yeah.
We advised her that she had to wear cool socks, so we were trying to coordinate. Actually, we found out we were almost coordinated.
Almost.
If Dale would have had
guess I
just
should've-
straight blue,
My bad.
we'd have been there. Way to go, Dale.
My bad. Before we get underway, we have some business to take care of. Our lawyers have prepared a small statement on nutrition advice.
Uh-oh.
Just kidding. We always do. Shoutouts!
What you got, Dale?
Well, we have to shout out to all of the St. Jude runners again. This is the post St. Jude
Yep.
shout out, St. Jude runners, because everybody kind of battled the conditions. They were a little weird for December 1st. It got up to almost 80 degrees.
Yeah, it was
And
hot.
it was warm for that day. So everybody who battled that, shout out to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Some more internal shout outs will go with Michael Ort. He had finally broke the 4-hour barrier on marathon, so that was awesome.
Attaboy, Michael.
Awesome day for him. Liz Hall. It's a great
Hound dogs.
yeah, hound dogs. Shout out to my dog Stitch, who will
Keeping the house safe.
guard dog. And shout out to Liz Hall, who had a PR half marathon. We knew that she was going to get a PR one way or another.
Right.
Whether she basically blew up or not, she was going to have a PR. So, what you got, Funston?
I got
While I go murder this dog. No, I'm not going to go murder my dog. So before you make any comments on that.
The
We're
lawyers
going to
are
pause
calling.
quickly here. We're going to pause quickly. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. Sherry Gubin, I'm going to give my shout out to. First ever half marathon. She's been putting in quite a bit of training.
Awesome.
Nice.
It was a bucket list thing for her that she wanted to do, but then she was notified that her daughter wants to do it with her next year. So
She's in.
So
She's
she
gonna
now
do
has
that.
to check the box at least twice. But she battled the tough conditions like you already mentioned. And proud of her for knocking it out.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Also, hop cycling started. We had our biggest group ever at the in-person
pretty
test,
awesome. Looked
threshold
huge.
test. What do we have? Close to 30 folks, I think, were there.
30
and
in,
then another
probably 10
plus
12
online.
online.
Sweat on top of sweat.
Yes, it smelled delicious.
I think we might owe Trevor a
shout out
cleaning.
to
God.
Trevor Ling over at Peak Potential. Hopefully,
Hopefully it doesn't smell funny
Carpet
in there
steamer
today.
rental on its way.
Yeah.
might be coming.
What you got?
Me, shout out to Jamie Bailey. Jamie Bailey ran a full marathon,
Bam.
which is ridiculous in
can't fake
70-degree
that.
weather. And then shout out to Pa, my dad right now, for
All right, Pa.
watching little baby Dax.
There
So-
we go.
Shout
So
out
that I
Baby
can
Dax.
be here. I know that everybody wants to see him instead of me. So people,
We should've-
I show up and they're like, "But where's Dax?" So
We should have
sorry.
had him right here.
I know he'd be louder than the dog. So
All right. So first off, Casey, let's get an idea of kind of your real quick history in sports and then how you got into triathlon and endurance sports in general. We'll start there.
okay.
Ready, set, go.
I got into nutrition and sports kind of around the same time. So I started running a lot and really just found out, you got to be lean to be fast. So I was trying to diet and, you know, be as lean as I possibly could, and I wasn't eating barely anything, and I really just felt like crap all the time. Because, you know, initially when you start losing weight and you're fast, you're like, this is great.
Yeah.
And I'll go to bed at 7 o'clock because I'm tired. But then, you know, that didn't last very long, and I started realizing that I needed more. So I started reading a lot about nutrition and fueling, and realized that the more I ran, the more fuel that I needed. As a simple concept as that was, it kind of like blew my mind.
I think that
when I was in college.
I think that's like one of the biggest things that most endurance athletes miss, because when they get into the sport, a lot of people do get into the sport to lose weight. And then they start losing weight, and then they want to either be more competitive or they want to do something more, but they don't want to
and
fuel for it.
And it seems kind of contradictory if you're thinking about sport as a weight loss, because you're like, well, surely I shouldn't eat anymore because I want to lose weight. But you need that balance and that adequate amount to stay lean, but also fuel your workouts and to be competitive and to be fast. So that's how I kind of got into nutrition and into sport. I ran for a long time, and then I kind of, I got myself into trouble because I was one of those people that would, okay, now I'm fast or faster, so now I should always run at this pace, you know?
Also a common mistake.
Yes. So I said, well, I need to run. I can run 8 miles, so I should run 8 miles every day. And I can run at 8:30.
Each day faster than the day before.
Exactly. So I thought, wow, I can do that. And of course, I got injured a lot. So before I got smart and hired a coach, I was like, you know what, running isn't for me. And then I figured out there was swimming and cycling, and decided to compete there. But I still went at the same approach of going hard and going, you know, for it all the time.
Full gas all the time.
All the time. And then, you know, obviously that had me wore out and tired and injured. So that's when I found you guys and figured out that recovery is king.
It was one of those cases where when you're making the training plan, you had to lead off with a recovery week.
This week,
What have you been doing?
This week
that's
we're
what
not
you've been
gonna
doing? This week you are doing absolutely nothing. Let the body recover.
That blew my mind, but then it really made sense once you trust the process and say, okay, let me scale back, let me do this, and trust that you know what you're talking about. And it just blew my mind. And, you know, and it really worked out for me, and I haven't been injured since at all. So
boom shakalaka.
That's what we love to hear.
Yeah.
So what, as far as like your education goes, like what, where'd your education lead you as far as nutrition and even in sport performance, exercise science, stuff like that?
So initially, sports nutrition is pretty competitive to get into. So I got my undergraduate degree in Middle Tennessee State University, and then came back to Memphis for the University of Memphis graduate program. And from there, I went into nutrition support. So that's working with patients in the hospital who, most of them are intubated and they need food through a tube or an IV to survive. So a lot of that's calculating nutrition needs and staying up on those kind of studies. And from there, I went into dialysis, working with people who had diabetes, hypertension, and renal disease, so that I could help them, you know, with their therapeutic diets. So I've worked with a lot of disease management, but all along the way, I've done a lot of sports nutrition just because it was a passion. After that, I moved into an eating disorder clinic. So there I kind of got to go back into sports nutrition because they really overlap. So you have a lot of people who have eating disorders, or a lot of athletes who have eating disorders, or just disordered eating patterns, or just in general people who need a little bit of help having peace with food and eating. So I learned a lot working with those people, because my early career was all about calculating energy needs and numbers, and then at the latter part of it, I found out people need to know more about how they eat and, figuring out
what's the psychological side of things a little bit.
or why they're eating, or how much. So it was cool to see the psychological part of it, and cause and effect of when you don't eat all day, what happens to your body.
Yeah.
So
I think that's been a really in watching you deal with some of the athletes that you've worked with, you take a bit of a different path with them, as far as not like handing them a meal plan and saying, good luck.
Yeah.
It's more of okay, let's figure out not only your needs, but your relationship with food.
Right.
And, find out what you like, don't like, or like your eating habits and stuff like that. And then making a little bit more of a guide system versus a meal plan.
Right.
Which,
And I think that's, kind of where I said about running. I could have come to you guys and say, no, I need to run this many miles a day. I need to do this. And a lot of people come to me and say, well, I need this many calories and I need to be on a diet. And, as an expert, you tell them, well, I don't think you really know what you need, to get what you want, to get to your goal. There may be another approach or another way to look at it, instead of, coming in and saying, I need this. So it takes a little trust in the nutrition area as well.
absolutely.
So
Probably
yeah.
almost more so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I
definitely.
mean,
And education, really. A lot of people want the pre-built program because they then don't have to think about it.
Right.
I mean, it's all done, and they go, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Rather,
Right.
with nutrition, you're constantly surrounded with tons of choices in a nutrition, in daily life.
Right.
Nutrition's always out there, as opposed to like the training side of things.
Right. And life is always going to come up. After having DAX, I realized that I don't have as much time to cook and to make all this stuff. So I think, before him, I might have been a little bit more naive and saying, well, get these perfectly plattered meals and things like that. And it's like, okay, what do you do in your life? Do you go out to lunch every day? Well, how can we make a better choice with your life? Because there's a lot of people who say, well, I will make my lunch every day. And you're like, realistically, are you going to do that?
I have 4 hours every day to train.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you?
Do you really?
Are you really going to wake up every morning?
Exactly.
Getting up at 2 a.m.
So yeah, you have to kind of create strategies that best work for your lifestyle. And a lot of that comes with education, so that you have the tools to make those decisions on your own, rather than just telling you to, cook chicken breast every day and to meal prep every day. Different things work for different people. So it's figuring out what your lifestyle is and how to strategize for that.
Excellent.
Absolutely. So, in your opinion, what's like, just if you could, one sentence, what is like biggest mistake that endurance athletes make with their nutrition? In an extremely complex, I want you to make it one sentence.
I would say the thing I see the most often is just a disproportion of calories. So a lot of people tend to have the same habits, because a lot of people are weight focused and they want to, be able to either maintain their weight or lose weight. Nobody is out there asking me, not a lot of people are asking me to gain weight, but so a lot of people wake up and then they don't have a breakfast. They drink a lot of coffee and they kind of like stack their energy until they're starving. And then they kind of have all their calories at the back end of the day. And that's not really efficient for your energy levels, your mood, or for fueling for exercise or for weight. It's more efficient to spread it out evenly throughout the day, and just eating even and often. throughout the day. So I see that a lot, and it's typical because people wake up and they have coffee, which is an appetite suppressant. So they say, I don't feel hungry.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're not going to if you drink 40 ounces of coffee, but that doesn't mean that you have fueled your body appropriately and given it energy. You've given it false energy. And as soon as that goes away, you're going to be really hungry around lunch and have less control over your choices, which leads into making bad choices.
Once you get hangry, once you get hangry,
I've been known to get hangry.
You throw just about anything you can down your gullet.
Right. So, and then
it's usually the stuff that's less than ideal, right?
Yeah, and then that's when the psychological part of it comes in, because people tell themselves, well, I was really good this morning. I had a banana in a bar, and then, they've had half of their day go by, and they say, well, then I was bad. I blew it around lunch. And you're like, you weren't bad. You just listened. Your body was screaming because it needed fuel, you know? So it's making a point of listening to that message earlier on, or, if
staying
you...
on top of it ahead of time.
Right, or being aware that coffee is an appetite suppressant and that you need to eat even if you don't feel that hunger in the morning, because it's being suppressed. So attacking it from the front end is a lot easier and one of the most common things. Just because it cycles, if you have a big dinner or snack all night, then when you wake up in the morning, you're going to go,
if you are on that back
I'm
load,
not hungry,
something's got to change in order to tip the scales back to where they should be.
Yeah. So it's starting and trusting that, if I eat in the morning, I'm not going to have that big dinner at night because I had more of a conscious choice during the day.
Yeah. And that's just retraining habits a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But I see that a lot. Yeah. Most people do that, and it's a quick fix, I would say, but maybe not
definitely.
for people who are doing it. But yeah.
All right, let's get into the. So we sent out emails and posts and asked for questions for Coach Casey to field.
And if anyone's on live,
if you drop one in here, we'll try to get to them. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Obviously, we're trying to keep this, not super long, but and this is an extremely complex.
Every time I show up, it ends up going over.
We're going to try to keep it fairly to the point.
We can stop and stretch.
We're not going to get
a little break.
There's
get
intermission.
Some water.
There's going to be an intermission.
Yeah, there'll be. We're going to break for lunch here shortly because we need our fuel.
Yes.
But yeah, we're going to start fielding some of these questions. So, Funson, what you got?
First one kind of deals with what we were just talking about. Is intermittent fasting something I should utilize for an extended period of time?
So intermittent fasting is kind of a new trendy thing that people are doing.
Give a quick rundown on what intermittent fasting.
I think like the biggest plan that they do is you eat normally on a couple days a week, and then you have, I think, like 2 or 3 days where you only consume about 600 or 500 calories, which in reality isn't enough to meet all your vitamin and mineral needs. It's not enough really for your lungs and brain.
Yeah, I was going to say it's almost not enough to support brain function.
Nobody's basal metabolic rate is 600 calories. So it's at a really big deprivation. But there's a lot of studies out there that are, getting into the media, but a lot of them are either on small study groups, or they're on rodents or on cells, so they're not really applicable to the general public or athletes. But I would say one reason I don't really like it, or another reason I don't really like it, is because I think it teaches people, it doesn't teach you a good habit lifelong. If you're eating normally on 5 days a week, it's like, couldn't you eat healthfully 7 days a week? But I think it teaches people to restrict and then binge, because if you're at a 600 calorie day, the next day you're going to be really hungry. And sometimes mentally that tells you, well, I can eat whatever I want.
Yeah,
so
I was good yesterday, so today I can...
Right, so I'm going to be bad today. So sometimes it leans towards going over rather than just following it to a T. But there are some advantages to say, there's some, I would say in the same wheelhouse as the studies on low carb, like racing or training, not racing, but training, where you might go for an hour workout with the hopes to burn more fat as fuel.
Yeah, and fasted morning workouts.
Fasted, yeah. So, there's some evidence to support that in the long run, but you really want to keep those around your like easy base training, nowhere. If you have a race coming up, or if you race year round and you're always, training really hard, doing harder intensity workouts, it's really not a good time to do that.
You'd be surprised how fast you blow through your glycogen stores when you're hitting it hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things, like for the whole, the biggest mistake question that endurance athletes tend to make. It almost seems like this time of year, people will put on 20 pounds, through Thanksgiving and Christmas time, the holiday season, and then, New Year's, you got your resolution time, but that's also for endurance athletes. You're kind of starting to get close to season, so people want to start losing a lot of weight right around the start of the season when intensity of workouts have gone up.
Right.
And so now they're trying to restrict calories while increasing intensity.
Yeah.
And so they're not fueling properly. They're having bad workouts because they're underfueled.
Right.
And it's like this.
Yeah, it's discouraging.
Snowball, right?
It's discouraging for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, now's the time.
In my opinion, if you have these workouts with pace goals or power goals, it's better to be fueled and to hit your numbers, because that's what you're paying a coach for. That's what you're training for, is to hit these pace goals to race at this, So, if you're not hitting them because you don't have the energy, then that's just kind of sabotaging yourself a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right, next question. I've plateaued with my weight loss. What should I do to jumpstart my diet again?
I don't know about jumpstart, but I would just say...
without looking at the person's nutrition that they're currently doing. So
I think it might be just looking at what you're currently doing and where you have fallen off in certain areas, and is it, are you not eating breakfast, or are you staying up late and snacking, or are you drinking a whole bottle of wine at night?
Just one glass. It's one glass. It's just the size of an entire wine bottle.
The goblet's is big, but just what are those habits that are creeping back in that that you say you only do it every once in a while, but when you look at it, it's every single day. So it's taking a good look at that and just getting back to normal instead of trying to go the complete other direction in this big restriction, because what you can stick with lifelong will be much easier than what you can stick with in 2 or 3 days as a jump start.
I usually tell people that if you're looking to if you're wondering what's going wrong, if you're not tracking it, just start tracking it. And that usually, it just jumps out at you in less than a week. You'll know exactly what's wrong.
Yeah, you can look in your pantry and just see you know what? Every time we've been buying those Nilla wafers.
Them Oreos are just so good.
They're just so good. Once they hit your lips.
Yeah. So good.
Can't have just one.
Oh, right. Yeah, essentially cleaning up. I mean, eating less processed foods.
Correct.
And getting back to eating a little more clean.
I think that people reach for diets when they, It's kind of like the people that go gluten-free and they're like, well, I lost so much weight. And it was like, well, you probably didn't lose weight from getting rid of the brown rice and the whole grains, but you stopped eating the cookies and the snacks and the crackers. And you're going to feel a lot better. Like you're going to have less inflammation. You're going to have all those things as an improvement, but it's not necessarily like the gluten, and not that gluten is in brown rice, sorry. But grain-free, you know what I mean. But I'm like, let me correct myself.
There we go.
We'll put the corrections in the show notes.
Edit. B-roll.
All right.
Camera one, camera
How do you plan? So this is more of a training related versus kind of a general nutrition thing. How do you plan for hydration and electrolytes when you're going for this long distance, Ironman distance, 140.6 race? And I'll continue on here. Do you time out how often you take in sodium, potassium, fluids, and the volume of fluid? You know, how do you take in that much?
A lot of planning for this is trial and error of coming up with a plan and then practicing it along the way. So you can definitely train your gut. The harder part, I would say, about an Ironman type distance is that you usually start your training 6 months, you know, it's over a really long period of time. So your sweat rate, you know, maybe at the beginning will be different come race day.
Sure.
So
definitely.
you need to do that periodically along the way so that you are up to date with how much volume you need per hour. A lot of the different products that are out there now have combination of your carbs and, you know, electrolytes. You may need to do a combination to meet all of your needs, but like sodium and things like that, because if you were just drinking Gatorade and you have a really high, you know, sodium concentration loss, you might need additional supplementation to that or change your beverage. But
I think one of the tough things for Ironman distance is just the volume that you're losing versus the volume that you physically can take in over the course of a 9, 12, 15 hour day.
And you're going to be at a deficit. It's going to be, you can't take in that many calories as you expend with any ultra distance race unless you're, you know, you go out to Shelby Forest and then you eat one of those giant sandwiches, 3 Cokes. But it's really hard to do that. And the way I like to tell people to do it is to do it often, you know, taking a swig of whatever it is or a bite of whatever it is almost every 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have a goal of how much per hour, you know, you can work on that along the way. When I did my Ironman, I broke up my little waffles into pieces before I even started so that I could just take a bite. And I knew, you know, I set a little annoying little beep thing on my Garmin so that it went beep beep and okay, here we go. And
what did you set that for? Like every 15,
every
20?
15.
Yep.
And then, you know, take some drinks in between. So I mean, it's work. You're eating the entire time you're on a bike for that thing.
Monotonous, right? It's just monotony. I mean, you go into a race and you got to be in it and engaged. With an Ironman, you're in it for a long period of time. It's not one of those where you're allowed to zone out for 2 hours. You got to stay on top of things if you're planning on making it through and having a good result.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we run into is most people, like you said, you're always running a deficit. And now we're not talking about a deficit that builds over 3 hours. We're talking a deficit that builds over 9, 12, you know. So when you could be running a, you know, 100 to 200 milligrams, let's say milligrams of sodium, if you're running a 200 milligram sodium deficit, that probably won't bite you 3 hours, 4 hours later, but 10, 12 hours later, that could become a problem. So
when it's time to start your marathon.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like we always tell people, make sure that your electrolytes, if you're looking at the hydration equation, you have electrolytes and then you have fluid, water essentially, and then electrolytes. And if you can throw calories in there, but we try to generally keep it separate because it's a whole nother variable. So fluid, you can drink to thirst generally as long as your electrolytes are, you know, proper balance for you. You know, it's when the problem becomes when the electrolyte content's too low, you have to physically drink more to meet those needs. So now you may be overhydrating and diluting your blood sodium. or the opposite. The opposite doesn't really necessarily happen that much because your body is so good at kind of processing and utilizing sodium. So a lot of people say, well, what if I put too much sodium in? What if I do too much on the electrolyte side? When you're working and you're actually sweating, that's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. So, and
that's where knowing your sweat rate and your numbers.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
we say drink to thirst. Make sure your bottles are concentrated for you. Drink to thirst, and then while you're in training, and then if you have issues, drink more.
Yeah.
Adjust.
And I mean, it's always good to have goals like of your sweat rate. Like, okay, I need to be through this bottle in an hour. I need to be through 2 bottles. And if you get behind that, obviously take that moment. I've never had an issue where like I could stop at a little water stop and down a whole 32 ounce in one little sitting. But, it's important to stay.
That's fine on your,
top of that, to make sure you don't get behind for sure.
And what you mentioned, training your gut. Like a lot of times you're going to have to train your stomach too.
Yeah, you can't show up on race day and expect to be able to take down a lot of food.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing that on your long rides and your long runs, you shouldn't be able to or expect to increase the amount that you're going to be taking in. Those training runs should be practice runs for, how you're dressing, how you're fueling, how you're hydrating, so that nothing unexpected comes up on race day.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, I just can't eat the morning before a race. I just can't eat before a long run or ride. I'm like, how many times have you tried?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
The first time may not go well.
Yeah.
You don't have to eat 5 bowls of oatmeal.
Right.
Start with a small bowl of oatmeal.
Exactly.
See how it goes, and preset a little bit until you're getting the calorie demand you're going to need.
When I work with athletes, I definitely tell them, this is a goal. This is where you should be, or what your body would need ideally. But if you're going from nothing, like don't grab 2 bagels, peanut butter, and a banana and expect to have a good day. If your gut is sensitive, start out with something small and then gradually work your way up. And usually like liquids that have calories, like smoothies or juices or applesauce, those softer foods are easier to tolerate. So if that helps you get the calories in the morning, then try those first.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on.
On hydration here. So
Moving on. Have there been any questions online yet?
Greg Rohde, shout out Greg, asked Coach Bryant, are cheesy bean and rice burritos fresco style good option for breakfast or lunch?
They're a good option for all times of day.
All times.
Cheesy bean and rice burritos. You got to get the fresco.
Matter of fact.
Fresco is the key.
Fresco is the key.
I'm surprised Brian didn't bring any in here with him.
Oh, man, I already had 3 today. Actually, I'm not. I had a big salad this morning, though. Yes. Little known fact.
So,
Taco Bell, pretty good place.
One other question we had, Kelly Doherty said, best way to keep energy up the last miles of the marathon. At what point is it too late to take in some carb load?
The last miles of the marathon, I feel like you're either there or you're not. Yeah. It's kind of too late to be thinking about that.
What's that point where you probably are, it's too late to continue to fuel, intelligently? I mean, you could throw it in there, but...
Yeah, I mean, I would say within the if you have 30 minutes left, you're not really doing much.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more of an error of what you've done leading up to that point.
Yeah, if you're bonking by that point, then it's going to be really hard. Even if you do consume something, because you're just topping off like a little bit more of an empty bucket,
Mm-hmm. It's a drop in the bucket.
So you're just kind of making sure that you don't pass out.
And the goal kind of goes back to that last question that was being answered. During your training runs, you should be figuring out what paces you can handle. Mm-hmm. Someone who's really struggling at the end of a marathon likely has either gone out too hard or has not paced themselves properly. And then you should also be testing your nutrition plan, like we just mentioned. So you should kind of get a feel if you're on a training run and you're feeling really bad at mile 18. You may want to relook at how much calories have you put in, what sort of fluids were you drinking, and start adjusting in your training. So it doesn't become as big of a problem. And the last mile is supposed to hurt anyway, right?
Yeah, I was like, a lot of that's just muscle fatigue. You know, it's the end of a marathon. It's not going to be easy, and it's probably not a nutrition issue at that point.
Sometimes it's not always energy. It's not that you're out of energy. Your muscles you're hitting something longer, harder, or fast. You know, whatever. You know, the workload is more than you've ever done. So it's gonna hurt. It's gonna feel so good.
Any others before we dive back into the?
I think you have the other question on here already.
Oh, okay. So, which one was it?
Keto.
The keto. Okay. Where was our keto question here? Have you ever had any experience with endurance athletes following a ketogenic diet? And talk about what a ketogenic diet is for those that aren't sure. And if so, how did it affect their performance?
This is going to be good.
Tell
us how you really feel.
Well, ketogenic diet is another one of those kind of trendy things. And I think it started with ultra runners and ketogenic diets. But in comparison to a lot of other fad diets, it's not high protein, it's high fat. So the majority of your calories are going to come from fat. So you're eating, olives and butter and all fat foods, so that your body goes into ketosis. And ketosis, from a clinical standpoint, I'd say is not a good place to be. Usually people are in the hospital and you want to get them out of ketosis. And so it's advantageous because people lose weight, and fat as a nutrient helps you feel full. So your stomach really isn't growling because you feel full from all that fat. But you don't really want to use that when you're an endurance athlete because your body runs on a lot of carbohydrates. So you need those carbohydrates to fuel your performance and your muscles. If you're doing any kind of intensity, your body needs carbohydrates. A lot of people who diet and use like those high protein diets, they end up being, kind of okay because protein will break down into, glucose. So they'll have some energy, but even though it's inefficient. But I'm not really a fan of the ketogenic diet.
I think one of the main things is if you're wanting to perform, and if you're not doing super long distance where you're staying at such a low heart rate to maintain for 24 hours or whatever it may be, your body's going to need... Your
body needs that. And then in the long term of just being a human being, these diets aren't studied long term, but there's a reason why the American Heart Association promotes lower fat, healthy fat diets and lots of fruits and vegetables because you get the fiber. High fat diets are led to plaque buildup and high cholesterol. So in the long term, will it lead you to having a heart attack or heart disease? Ketogenic diets
so that's not good?
I don't think that's good for your heart. I don't think, plaque and build up around your veins and arteries are a good thing. So,
I think the biggest thing you said there is that, which is true for a lot of things that just kind of come on really fast into the endurance world, which is this stuff has not been studied long term at all. There may be some like small research studies done that show some positive, and then boom, everybody wants to jump on board, but it's just there's no research that's been done long term to show that it's actually beneficial to performance or to your health, one way or another. But there are a lot of long-term research studies that say these activities that go along with this same diet are not healthy for you.
Right. And then, anytime you go up in duration or intensity, your body wants more carbohydrates because you burn through them quickly. So if you're an endurance athlete, you're going to be doing both. So it's more advantageous to eat healthy carbohydrates and in the right amount and balance to fuel your performance. Those people are always going to go faster. So don't you want to be fast?
All right, next one. Should you use Tailwind nutrition and goo at the same time? And so we went and dove into Tailwind Nutrition's nutrition label here. And essentially it's 100 calorie per scoop is the serving size. They're recommending 2 to 3 scoops per 24 ounces of water per hour. So essentially what Tailwind is sodium breakdown, 303 milligrams of sodium, no protein, carbohydrates are at 25 grams of sugars, and then we got smaller amounts of potassium, calcium, magnesium, so the other electrolytes. So essentially,
it's a sports drink.
It's a sports drink, yeah.
There's a lot of different sports drinks out there that, they have all kinds of marketing claims, but when they're sports drinks. And so, yeah, typically if you are drinking a sports drink, this one, if you just had one serving, you'd have about 25 grams of carbohydrate. And most people are going to need in between 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour for their longer endurance activities. So the smaller you are, more closer to 45. The bigger you are, closer to 60. I guess the answer to the question would be most people are going to need a sports drink plus some source of food or nutrition, whether it is a gel, a goo, or a banana, or half a sandwich, or whatever it is. Usually you need sports drinks plus something else for your longer endurance activities.
Yeah, I find that, and this is where nutrition takes on a personal, everyone's going to have different demands, but everyone also has different stuff that actually works with their stomach. If I drink something that's high in sugar and try to exercise at a high intensity, it just does not go well for me. I'm like burping it up and get the gut rot. And so for me, I can't do gels. I don't do Gatorades. Before I was using the pH stuff, I would go with the 0-cal stuff because I didn't want the sugars on my gut. And I use Whole Foods. I do bars instead of the gels. So for this person, Tailwind Nutrition and goo, essentially you're just upping the amount of the goo label is going to look pretty similar to what your Tailwind's going to look like. So it's like you're adding another scoop almost.
Right. And so that, I'd say like the more liquidy kind of stuff, you have I wouldn't do that like for an entire Ironman or half Ironman distance. I think you would need more protein and something that makes you feel full and satiated. But, I'm different where I can tolerate the Gatorade, the sugary liquids and goos, and that's what I use for a lot when we would do the Mark Spensdorf team rides and the pace started picking up, and I knew I needed energy, but I can't breathe because y'all are going so fast. And, so I couldn't breathe and chew at the same time. And so that was a plan that would work for me for those harder rides, and my gut didn't have an issue with it. So it was meeting those numbers in different ways. But if I'm riding with my dad
shout out
and we're chilling, we can I can be back there eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich and have a good time. But that's the cool thing about nutrition, is that there's multiple ways to get to where you're going. And so a lot of times, as much as people don't like to hear it, that it's trial and error. So what works for you might not work for me. And, a lot of it is figuring that out along the way by trying different things and not giving up either. Because a lot of people do that, and they'll be like, well, I had, I tried this and then
Once.
I'm never going to do it ever again. And
different times a year, stuff may sit well in your stomach, and the heat picks up, heart rate's picking up, and energy demands are going up. And suddenly what tasted good and worked well when it was ice cold because it was a winter
when it gets warm
training session, now you got some warm, hot, whatever it is, and it's like, ooh, that's not so good.
And then dehydration can make it so that you don't tolerate foods or that you don't digest it. So if you're dehydrated and then you tried to eat something and then you say, well, I can't ever eat that again. It might have been you were just dehydrated. So
and that's one of the things, Dale and I talked quite a bit about. We generally prefer, for those that need to consume larger amounts of fluid, having your fluid separate from your nutrition. Because if you're needing to drink, Dale and I have mentioned many a time that, we can consume 3 1-liter bottles over the course of 2 hours. It sits fine on our stomachs, but we're going through, we're sweating out double that pretty much. But if each one of those was filled with 300 calories or more, what we'd need for our sodium demands, we need to do at least 300 calories per. If you need to drink more than what you actually need from a calorie standpoint, then having those separate can be beneficial. But again, convenience
and easier to calculate. But
convenience is huge as well. I mean, if you're not going to eat a bar, you need to get your calories. So what works best for you.
Yeah, because if you guys say that there's like a hot spot, and then the whole ride becomes a hot spot, and then
calorie demands change, right? All right, next one. So essentially that, try it, test it, see if it works. If you need the extra calories, you have the goo, but there's no problem with doing those together.
You want to fill this question from Jamie real quick?
Yep.
What's how about alcohol intake on recovery?
Oh God. She's like,
is that a direct?
She's like drinking a beer, watching TV. What about? I mean, alcohol can affect your performance, I think, up to 72 hours after you drink it. It's either 48 or 72, so it can decrease your performance. And since your body is worried about metabolizing alcohol, that's going to be its primary goal instead of repairing the muscle fibers that you've broken down. So as much as we want it to be a recovery drink and how much we kid about that, it's really not.
It's not your best choice.
Right.
It's just about making a better choice today.
Sure. I mean, and it's always good. I mean, because I'm not going to tell you not to drink a beer after... I will be the first one to pull out my cooler from the car. But, initially you should rehydrate first and then have whatever recovery you're going to have and then get to your beer instead of rehydrating, with whatever it is.
Don't make that your rehydration drink of choice.
I think it's funny because it's like, is binge drinking okay? Like,
well, I mean, if you add a little protein in that for the muscle repair, I think you're good.
But yeah, I mean,
what about those protein beers?
Or
that beer with salt in it. Come on.
I mean, there's a million ways to try to convince yourself.
Those are carbs. There's carbs in beer.
All right, moving on before we get too off track and.
It's like
3 hours in here. All right, a lot of times pre-race night, so your dinner the day before a race can get off track. You travel to a race with some friends. In this person's question, and you don't have that controlled environment that you would have at home. So, what are some general do's and don'ts as far as food protocol the night before a tri or other races? And I'm assuming that this is, you've gone out of town, you've got a group of people you've been training together, you're excited, this is an event, but also hanging out and having fun. Surrounding the event is also what's going on. I'd say just lots of Mexican food, right?
Yep. Fresco burritos.
I always feel like those people, there's a lot of food pushers out there. And I just use that term a lot in eating disorders because people, it's like grandma. They're like, well, you should try this. Or you want some bread, Or I usually.
Why aren't you eating anymore?
Exactly.
Or my dad will grab, it'll be like the second serving of bread that they have at the restaurant. And he's like, this will get me to mile 15. You're like, yes, if you don't eat that, you'll get to mile 15. But I mean, you can always take it and put it on your plate. You don't have to eat it. Go into it with having a goal of, I'm going to hydrate, I'm going to drink my water, and picking out, what your carbohydrate source is. So if it is Mexican, are you going to have some beans as your carbohydrates? Are you going to have, if you're going to Italian, is it going to be some kind of pasta? Or if you're at a seafood steak place, are you going to choose a sweet potato or a baked potato? Figuring out what are the components on your plate that can help you meet your goals as it normally would. So having, some source of light protein, carbohydrates, and then pretty low in fat is what I would say. So, staying away from a lot of white sauces, cheese dip.
If it tastes heavy.
Yes, those
the super
heavier
rich
type
stuff
foods
can sometimes cause a problem for people.
And then just being able to set some boundaries with your friends and saying no, because
save the fun for the after race shindig, especially if it's a big goal event.
If they're spectating, they can drink all they want, but you've put in the training over months, so that beer will be at the finish line, and you don't have to do that. So you can tell them no, or you can say, "I'll just have one." It's a Mick Ultra. It's practically water. So, yeah, I mean, it might be just setting some boundaries and then looking at the options and typically picking whatever seems like the simplest whole food dish. If it's something that you don't understand or something new to try, and they're going on and on about whatever sauce it's soaking in, that might not be your best option.
And I think the same, know what works for you the night before your training rides. Your training is a great way to practice and know how you're going to perform on. Yeah, it's probably the only way to know how you're going to perform on race day. So the more things you change up the day of or the day before, the more variables that you're entering into the equation. And breakfast, I know, is a big one. You get to a race, and if you haven't practiced eating breakfast, and you got the people around you that are like, I eat 8 bagels, and I eat 2 bowls of oatmeal, and I have peanut butter in each one of those, and you're like, well, I'm just going to do what they're doing. And you start eating everything, and then that can be a bad thing. So practice it.
Yes, practice.
I think that's been the underlying.
All right.
There's a lot of different options out there, and I mean, the people at the restaurant, you're paying them, so don't feel embarrassed to ask also, to leave things off or to manipulate whatever the meal is.
I do that a lot.
You're paying for it. So and if you feel embarrassed, just be like, well, I have a sauce allergy. It's okay, or so
everywhere we go now, Brian's like, okay, this is going to be a little complicated.
Yep, I prep them. Them in advance. I'm like, the people that just do it all from memory. I'm like,
you're not going to write this
I'm
down?
not your traditional
I brought
order.
you a pen.
Yeah. All right, moving on. What types of food besides gels are easy on the gut and great for fuel on long bike ride, or essentially long training sessions, bike rides during triathlon running?
Easy on the gut. Usually the softer foods, like if you think about it, it doesn't, mechanically to chew it. Usually it's lower in fiber. So obviously if you had broccoli, you have to chew that for a long time. So that would be high in fiber. But foods like waffles, potatoes, bananas, you can make your own little mash if you wanted to, or go in the kids aisle. If you go into the baby food aisle, you could get a mix of.
Casey's got a new appreciation for the baby food aisle.
Yeah, look at this stuff. It's great.
These plums are great.
They're usually not very good for sodium, but if you're doing it just as a food source, those things are great if you have a sensitive gut. Some people like peanut butter jelly or almond and jelly. Pop-Tarts.
I usually go with, kind of my go-to is the Lar bars. I tend to like, because it's not 800 ingredients on those. It's a very simple ingredient list, and those just tend to work well for me. Certain types, other types don't. So again, it comes down to testing. How about you, Dale? What?
I usually, like Whole Foods wise, I usually use fig bars, bananas.
Fig bars.
Fig has always been real easy on my stomach.
Saltines?
Even regardless of the intensity. Sometimes you're going so hard they're hard to chew.
Yeah, you gotta swig water while you're
you gotta
swish your bar.
But yeah, fig bars and bananas are usually my go-to.
Yeah, hot banana.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I have a hot banana.
Hey, hot banana.
Sometimes you don't.
One day we'll tell you the hot banana story.
I'm telling you, banana is possibly the worst food you could bring in a criterium. Just saying.
Unwrapped.
We can keep going.
For those for longer distance races, a lot of times, or any race, if you're doing trail race, marathon, whatever it is. I typically go to their website and I look at what they have on the race course, and I purposely bring those things out on my training ride because you never know, are your crackers going to get smashed, or are you not going to have time to pick up your special needs bag? Multitude of things that could go wrong. So usually I look, and they always carry things like pretzels and broth if it's really cold, So sometimes it's good to look at what your goal race has available and try to work out those things because they will be there. So that's always a good trick if you don't know what to have.
Yeah, when I did St. Jude 24, I knew burritos work well, going back to the whole burrito thing. And the guy I was doing the 24-hour ride with coaxed one of his employees to bring out a Taco Bell bag for us, and whole food after eating just like a bunch of kind of snacky, not so good, but having an actual thing over a course, it's 24 hours, so that's a long period of time, and our intensity level wasn't super high. I would not be in a criterium and trying to eat a burrito, that's for sure. But
I got to fuel 45 grams.
Exactly, but if you are doing long distance stuff, eating normal foods is something that...
Well, yeah, like with 24-hour things, you have to think you're not just fueling for your activity. You have 2,000 plus more calories that you just to breathe and think and be alive. So it's that on top of the activity that you're doing for a very long time. So sometimes it's good to have a moment where you can do that.
Sweet. All right, last question. I'd like to know Casey's tips for dealing with insulin resistance in athletes and incorporating that into training and races. Is there a proper strategic use for carbs, especially the simple carbs?
So people who have insulin resistance, exercises or endurance exercise is pretty beneficial because it functions like insulin. So it's going to improve insulin resistance. So it's good for people to exercise if you have insulin resistance. People with type 1 diabetes and who have to take insulin, a lot of times they will tell you to not take as much insulin, even though that's a big scale, because your insulin is going to drop, or your blood sugar is going to drop during activity and then thereafter. So if you are watching your blood sugar, it's kind of like with your sweat rate you should do, where you should check it before, check it after, and then, or during, and then after, and then a little bit after, and figure out what works best. Typically, your more complex carbohydrates are going to have a slower release of energy, so you'll have a more stable energy release in usage. But a lot of the gels and products that are out there aren't actually just straight up glucose. They're maltodextrin, so they're meant not to specifically just spike your blood sugar, but it kind of is an individual thing. When you're working with diabetes or insulin resistance to figure out how quickly you react, because if you go for an easy run or an easy ride, it's going to be way different than a moderate intensity ride. So you may need a little bit more to balance your blood sugar and not be hypoglycemic, which is the biggest risk. So that might be an individual kind of not trial and error wouldn't be great, but of monitoring and mapping your blood sugars and seeing what works best for energy. But in general, like a healthy diet for diabetics or people who have insulin resistance, you're going to focus on those complex carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables, and that's going to be beneficial during activity as well too. So that would be a big goal of training your gut, because the complex carbs are going to have more fiber. So if that's the type of fuel you need to train with it and teach your gut how to tolerate it. Yeah, for sure.
I recommend doing small loops near your house initially. No long out and backers. And moving on, that's all I got from the
consult a dietitian and see them specifically.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah.
I'm going to read the thing from our lawyers again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone's having to deal with special
management,
disease management style stuff, that's something you need to be
all the studies in
hand.
endurance sports are going to be based off of healthy people. So no complications, nothing tricky. So if you are managing something else, then you don't want to take the general information. You want to learn what your body needs specifically and to work it out like that.
Yep.
For sure.
Any other questions from Facebook there?
No other questions. I think we about covered it. Well, this is the record for the longest.
Oh wait, we did have one more. Sorry. This is the. I'm going to read the whole thing. Ooh,
last question.
I have a good one. How to get a truly accurate count of calorie expenditures during exercise. Every app, website, calculation, calorie meter, journal, encyclopedia says something different. Good luck.
I feel like you guys could say a lot about this too. Just because, I mean, you can step on an elliptical and it's going to tell you, you go for 10 minutes and it's like, you burned 1,000 calories. And you're like, no, I did not. Fitbits, I mean, I feel like everything overestimates.
Because it makes you feel good, right?
Yeah, but I feel like you just shouldn't watch your calories down to a hair point. Mm-hmm. If you're full, then you're full. Mm-hmm. If you're hungry...
I'm not full till my plate is clean, Casey.
If you're hungry, you may need to eat something. Yeah. So a lot of that is generalizations and knowing what a range is and using that per hour, but not getting too specific. You shouldn't look at your watch and it tell you that you burn 50 calories so you can go eat an apple. It shouldn't be that mechanism. You should have some kind of response from in your body that says, like, I'm still hungry or I'm still full, or I am full, and not fully depending on those electronics to tell you how your body feels inside.
Yeah, essentially it's not going to be.
But they're not.
A
lot of them aren't accurate. You can do an estimation based off your body weight, but it's going to vary. Just like, maybe yesterday morning I burned a little bit more calories because I was following Dax, and today maybe it's a little bit less because I'm sitting on a couch.
Yeah, a comfy Costco couch. Shout out to Costco.
But it's going to vary a little bit every day, but you're going to be in a certain range, so you can't just be crazy about it, I guess.
Don't make yourself crazy.
Yeah. That's
cool.
not fun.
All right, now that's the last one. Go ahead and go back to the closing, Dow.
Oh, well, we missed the one. How could the one from Heart?
Oh,
This is a question for Bryant.
this one's
Specifically
for me.
aimed at
How
Brian.
much better will I be if I go full vegan? Was Hart's question. So Hart's been doing the vegetarian mode for a long time. And,
Not any better.
And yeah, essentially.
And you'll
comes down to-
become very difficult to go out to
Your
eat.
poops will go from this big to this big.
Ah, man.
Sorry.
Hart.
Softer stools in
Wrong
your future.
couch.
I'm going to say even better. No, it's going to be hard for Hart. Hart does the work, and he's, I mean, I think any diet really, or diets on the surface, I mean, I think if you want to be healthy and you want to perform well, it all comes down to eating the whole foods, the unprocessed stuff, as much as possible. Not saying that you need to shun all the other stuff, but eating whole foods that haven't been chemically adjusted or added to, you're going to end up feeling better.
Yeah, it's
performing better.
adequacy, yes, balance and variety. But I mean, vegan is also, a lot of people do that just for weight loss, but in my mind, it should be more than that. It should be, for whatever other reasons you have along with it, because it's not just a diet, in my opinion. But
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any other questions, shoot them at us, and we'll hook you up with Coach Casey and help you out. So we'll catch you guys next time.
Do you do a foot wave?
Foot wave. People aren't really going to see this. Like the 3 people watching.
Yeah, they're gonna be like,
I don't
do
know.
a foot wave.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time. Adios.